The whole gym laughed when a black belt jokingly asked a quiet young woman to spar. She looked like a beginner, someone with no chance against a trained martial artist. But within seconds, the laughter turned into silence, and what she revealed on that mat shocked everyone watching. This isn't just a story about skill. It's a powerful reminder to never judge someone by appearances. Never underestimate someone just because of how they look. That's the mistake a respected black belt made one afternoon inside a crowded martial arts gym. It was late in the afternoon, the kind of day when sunlight streamed faintly through the high windows, casting long slivers of golden light across the mats. The gym was alive with energy, the sounds of feet hitting mats, the sharp slaps of kicks against pads, and the steady rhythm of deep breathing as students warmed up. The air carried that familiar mix of sweat, focus, and discipline that only a martial arts school could have. In the middle of it all stood their instructor, a man whose reputation stretched far beyond those four walls. He was a seasoned black belt, a veteran of countless sparring matches and tournaments. His hair was streaked with gray now, but his body was still lean, strong, and sharp with years of training. Students respected him not only for his skill, but also for confidence he carried. Confidence that sometimes came with a touch of playfulness. He had a habit of lightening the mood during classes, teasing his students when they hesitated, cracking jokes when things got too tense, and occasionally throwing out a playful challenge. His laughter filled the gym as easily as his commands. To him, martial arts was not just discipline and combat. It was a way to connect, to teach, and sometimes entertain. That day seemed no different. Students stretched and sparred in pairs, while a few new faces observed from the sidelines. The black belt's eyes wandered over the room until they landed on someone he hadn't seen before. Near the edge of the mats stood a young black woman. She wasn't dressed like the others. No crisp white GI, no color belt tied neatly around her waist. Instead, she wore a simple coral red t-shirt and black leggings. Her hair was tied back, her posture relaxed, her arms loosely at her sides. To the instructor, she looked more like a curious beginner who had wandered in out of interest, maybe here to watch a friend or decide whether she wanted to sign up. There was nothing about her outward appearance that screamed fighter. She didn't fidget nervously, but she also didn't look like she belonged to the world of martial arts he knew so well. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He loved opportunities like this, moments where he could put someone at ease by letting them play along. He thought it would be fun, harmless. He raised his voice so the room could hear. Why don't you come up and try? Let's see what you've got. The effect was immediate. Heads turned. Students paused mid-stretch, mid-conversation. A few grins spread across faces, and whispers rippled through the gym. The laughter started light, but contagious. To most of them, the idea was amusing. This woman, standing in her plain clothes, facing off against their instructor? Surely, it would be little more than a playful exchange. A beginner throwing sloppy punches while the black belt gently guided her through. One student near the back chuckled, elbowing his friend. She won't last 10 seconds. Another whispered, this'll be good. Watch. The woman, however, didn't seem fazed by the sudden attention. She blinked once, then slowly walked toward the center of the mat. Her steps were even, unhurried. There was no hesitation, no nervous shuffle. She simply moved forward, as though this was exactly where she belonged. That subtle confidence caught the eye of a few sharper students. One of them, a brown belt, frowned slightly. Something about the way she carried herself, balanced, steady, aware, wasn't typical of a complete beginner. But before he could voice his thoughts, the woman had already stepped onto the mat. The black belt grinned wider, holding his hands up in a casual mock stance. His tone was playful, teasing. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you. A few students laughed again. Someone even clapped, egging the moment on like it was a show. The woman's expression didn't change. She didn't laugh, didn't smile nervously, didn't protest. She just looked at him, her eyes calm, focused, and steady. For the first time, a sliver of curiosity flickered across the instructor's face. Most beginners laughed or waved him off. Some hesitated, muttering, "Oh no, not me," as they backed away. But she wasn't hesitating. "Come on then," he said, still playful. Just show me what you've got. She raised her hands, not clumsily, but with a subtle precision that a trained eye might have noticed. Her feet positioned themselves in a stance that looked too natural, too practiced, to belong to someone brand new. But most of the students didn't notice. To them, this was still a joke. Their laughter filled the room like background music, fueling the expectation of what they thought they were about to see. The instructor took a step closer, still relaxed, still certain of how this was going to play out. His grin hadn't faded. To him, this was nothing more than a moment of levity, a way to entertain his students and maybe encourage a newcomer to join. He extended his arm, throwing a gentle jab toward her shoulder. Slow, controlled, harmless. The kind of move you'd use to test someone without scaring them. And that, right there, was the moment everything began to change. Because no one, not the instructor, not the laughing students, not even the curious brown belt watching from back, no one expected what happened next. The young woman didn't hesitate. She didn't fidget, didn't look around nervously, and didn't get the kind of awkward laugh most beginners will when suddenly placed in the spotlight. Instead, she walked forward with the calmness of someone who had been there before, countless times. Each step she took was deliberate, measured, and balanced. Her bare feet pressed into the mat with quiet certainty, her posture upright, her movement smooth, no clumsy shuffle, no hesitation. And that's when the first ripple of doubt spread through the room. The laughter softened. It wasn't gone yet, but it wasn't as loud or carefree as before. A few students leaned forward slightly, narrowing their eyes. They were beginning to notice what most people had missed at first glance. She moved like she belonged there. The black belt instructor, however, kept his wide grin. To him, this was still just a light-hearted moment, a harmless bit of fun to test a newcomer's reflexes. He raised his hands in a casual stance and winked. "Don't worry," he said, voice filled with confidence. "I'll go easy on you." A few students chuckled again, though not as many this time. Something about her quiet composure was unsettling, though they couldn't quite put their finger on why. The woman didn't respond. Not a word. She simply stopped in front of him, planted her feet firmly, and raised her hands slightly. Not high, not exaggerated, but in a way that instantly caught the attention of a few sharper eyes in the room. Her stance wasn't the awkward, uncertain pose of someone mimicking what they'd seen in movies. It was natural, balanced, efficient. Her elbows tucked just right, her weight evenly distributed, her eyes locked forward. One of the brown belts standing in the back tilted his head. His arms crossed tighter over his chest as he studied her. That's not how a beginner stands, he thought. That's someone who's been trained. Still, most of the room wasn't convinced. To them, she was just another curious visitor who'd stumbled onto the mat. Looks could be deceiving, yes, but in their minds, her plain clothes and calm demeanor meant she couldn't be anything more than a beginner. The instructor gave a little bounce on his feet, still grinning. "All right, let's begin." He stepped forward, extending his arm in a slow, playful jab toward her shoulder. The kind of move designed to be safe, gentle, almost patronizing, just enough to test her reactions without causing any harm. And then it happened. Before his fist came anywhere near her, she slipped her body to the side with effortless timing. No wasted movement, no panic, no overreaction. In one clean motion, she avoided the strike and, almost playfully, extended her own hand. Her fingertips tapped his shoulder lightly, as if marking him. It was so quick, so smooth, that the sound of her tap seemed to echo in the silence that followed. The crowd gasped. The noise wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Dozens of breaths sucked in all at once. A few students blinked rapidly, unsure of what they'd just seen. "Wait, what just happened?" someone whispered. Others exchanged looks of disbelief. To them, it looked almost too easy, too natural, like she'd anticipated the strike before it even came. For a split second, the gym was silent. Then came the nervous chatter. "No way, she dodged him. Did you see how fast that was?" That had to be luck. Just luck. But not everyone was so quick to dismiss it. The brown belt in the back frowned deeper now, his eyes locked on her. Luck didn't look like that, he thought. That was control. That was skill. The instructor, for his part, chuckled, raising his eyebrows in genuine surprise. His grin remained, but there was something different in his eyes now. Curiosity. He rolled his shoulders back, resetting his stance. "Not bad," he admitted, his voice carrying across the room. "Not bad at all. Let's try again." There was a ripple of excitement through the students. Some smirked, convinced that the first exchange had been nothing but coincidence. Others grew quiet, leaning forward, eager to see if she could do it again. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't even acknowledge the whispers around her. Her eyes never left the instructor, her hands steady, her breathing controlled. Confidence in silence. That's what it was. She didn't need words. She didn't need to prove anything with bravado. The quiet strength in her presence was enough to shift the atmosphere in the room. For the first time, the instructor adjusted his footing just slightly. He wasn't laughing at her anymore. He was intrigued. And for the students watching, that was the moment they began to realize this was no ordinary beginner standing before them. The instructor's smile lingered, but it was different now, less playful, more curious. He shifted his weight slightly, adjusting his stance. The woman hadn't just slipped past his jab earlier. She had done it with the confidence and precision of someone who had trained for years. And while he wasn't ready to admit it out loud, deep down he knew this was no beginner. He decided to test her properly. This time, he moved faster. His leg snapped forward in a sharp, low kick aimed at her shin, quick enough to catch most newcomers off guard. Before his foot even touched the mat again, he followed with a sudden strike toward her midsection. The move was fast, efficient, and meant to overwhelm. Most beginners would flinch, stumble backward, or freeze under pressure. But she wasn't like most beginners. In one fluid motion, she pivoted her hips, angled her leg to block the kick, and flowed seamlessly into redirecting his hand. Her palm guided his arm off its path, sending a strike harmlessly past her body. It wasn't brute force. It was timing, control, and technique. The effect on the room was immediate. The laughter that had filled the gym earlier disappeared. Not a chuckle, not even a whisper. Every head turned, every eye locked on her. The once casual crowd leaned forward in their seats, their smiles fading into open-mouthed disbelief. Something about the way she moved, the sharpness, the precision, the calmness, was too perfect for luck. "Did you see that?" One student whispered, his voice cracking. "No way, she blocked both." Another muttered, "That wasn't luck." The brown belt in the back said quietly to himself. The instructor's grin slowly melted into something more serious. He adjusted his stance again, this time circling her carefully. His eyes narrowed, scanning her movements, testing her balance. The respect in his gaze was subtle but undeniable. "All right," he muttered under his breath, barely loud enough for the front row to hear. "Let's see what you can really do." The tension in the room thickened. Students leaned in, their hearts racing as though they were the ones about to spar. The instructor launched forward, faster this time, his fist aimed squarely at her chest. The strike was sharper, carrying more intent, more weight behind it. This was no longer a playful test. This was the move of someone who wanted real answers. But she didn't back away. Instead, she stepped forward, inside his range, closing the distance before his strike could land. With almost effortless control, she used his own momentum against him, redirecting his arm with the lightest touch. Her other hand moved quickly, pressing firmly yet gently against his chest, right over his heart. She didn't shove. She didn't slam into him. She didn't need to. She simply stopped him cold. The black belt froze in place, eyes wide, his arm extended uselessly in the air while her palm rested exactly where it needed to be. A move that simple, that clean, said more than any strike could. And then silence. The entire gym went still. The sound of sparring in the background faded as everyone realized what they had just witnessed. Not a word, not a laugh, not even the shuffle of feet broke the moment. Every student was frozen, their gazes locked on the young woman who had just outmaneuvered their instructor with ease. The brown belt's jaw tightened. He knew what he had just seen. That wasn't a beginner's luck or coincidence or a trick of timing. That was mastery. The white belts, meanwhile, gawked in disbelief. Their eyes flicked back and forth between their instructor's stunned expression and the woman's calm, steady stance. One whispered, She stopped him. Another replied, voice trembling, She could have finished him if she wanted to. The weight of the realization rippled through the crowd like a shock wave. The instructor slowly stepped back, his chest rising and falling, though she hadn't even struck him hard. It wasn't physical exhaustion. It was the dawning awareness of what had just happened. For years, he had been the one everyone in that gym looked up to, the one whose movements were studied, whose skill was unquestioned. And yet here, in front of his own students, a woman no one knew had just silenced him with nothing more than precision and control. But the most striking part wasn't the move itself. It was her composure. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile triumphantly. She didn't even acknowledge the shocked faces surrounding her. Her eyes remained calm, her stance steady, her breathing even, confidence in silence. That same unshakable calmness that had carried her onto the mat was now magnified, filling the entire room with its quiet power. And that silence, it was louder than any cheer, louder than any applause. For the first time in years, the instructor felt a humbling weight press against his pride. He wasn't angry. No, not at all. Instead, he felt something unexpected. Respect. Deep, genuine respect. The silence stretched on, heavy and unbroken. Students stared. The moment seared into their memories. The playful challenge had turned into something far greater. A lesson none of them would ever forget. Because in that moment, every single person in the gym understood one undeniable truth. They had just witnessed skill, real skill, and the woman who had walked in quietly, unnoticed, underestimated by nearly everyone in the room, had just revealed it for all to see. The instructor stepped back, his chest rising and falling as though he just finished a full round of sparring. But in reality, the entire exchange of Maya had lasted less than a minute. He hadn't been hit, not really. She hadn't hurt him, hadn't thrown a single strike with force. Yet somehow, he felt a strange heaviness, a weight that wasn't physical but emotional, a weight that came from realizing he'd misjudged her from the very beginning. The playful grin that had never left his face during the first moments of the spar began to shift. Slowly, it melted into something deeper. It wasn't mockery now. It wasn't arrogance. It was respect. The gym was still silent. Every student frozen, as if afraid to break the spell of what they had just seen. The air itself felt heavy with tension, carrying the echo of her palms, stopping him cold. Finally, the instructor's voice broke through the silence. It was steady but quieter than usual, carrying a new tone, humility. "All right," he said, his eyes locked on her. "Who are you?" It wasn't the voice of a man demanding answers. It was the voice of someone who genuinely wanted to know, who needed to understand. For the first time since stepping onto the mat, the young woman spoke. Her tone was calm, controlled, yet full of quiet strength. "My name is Maya," she said. Her voice carried across the room, steady and unshaken. "I've been training since I was 8 years old. My father was a world champion. He taught me everything he knew." The words rippled through the gym like a wave crashing against rocks. Gasps filled the air. Students who had been leaning forward now sat back in disbelief. Whispers broke out almost immediately. Her father a world champion? No wonder she moves like that. That explains everything. It was as if puzzle pieces had suddenly snapped into place. Every movement she had made, the fluid blocks, the perfect timing, the unshakable calm, it all made sense now. She wasn't just some beginner plucked from the sidelines. She was someone with years of discipline carved into her very being. The brown belt who had been watching closely from the back nodded to himself. He knew it all along. He had seen it in her stance, in the way she carried herself, in the confidence of her silence. But even he hadn't guessed the full truth. Maya stood still, her posture relaxed but her presence powerful. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't demanded respect. She had simply revealed who she was. And the truth had done the rest. The instructor nodded slowly, his lips pressed together in thought. His chest was still heaving lightly, not from exhaustion, but from the humbling realization washing over him. He had underestimated her, badly, and he wasn't ashamed to admit it. He bowed his head deeply, his voice carrying through the silent gym with sincerity. "I underestimated you. And I think we all just learned a valuable lesson today." There was no sarcasm, no joking edge, just raw honesty. The students watched in awe as their instructor, the man they looked up to, the one they considered untouchable, lowered his head in respect to a woman they had laughed at only moments earlier. And Maya? She smiled faintly. It wasn't the smug smile of victory, nor the grin of someone proving a point. It was gentle, subtle, almost humble. She didn't gloat. She didn't boast. She didn't bask in the whispers of shock around her. Instead, she lowered her eyes and returned his gesture, bowing back in silence. It was a kind of bow only true martial artists understood. A bow that said, "This isn't about pride. This isn't about winning or losing. This is about respect." The gym remained still, as though no one wanted to move too soon and disturb the sacredness of the moment. For years, the students had seen their instructor humble them. They had been the ones corrected, tested, and pushed beyond their limits. But this time it was different. This time, they had witnessed their teacher humbled by someone they had mocked. And that made the lesson even more powerful. One white belt whispered softly, almost to himself, "I'll never laugh at anyone on the mat again." Another added, "I thought she didn't belong here. I was wrong." Even those who had been silent now felt a change stirring inside them. They understood something profound. Skill, discipline, and respect aren't written on the clothes you wear. They're carried in how you move, how you speak, and how you carry yourself in silence. The respect Maya showed in that bow spoke louder than any strike she could have delivered. She could have embarrassed the instructor, could have flaunted her skill in front of everyone. But she didn't. That restraint, that humility, that was the mark of a true martial artist. And so, the lesson didn't just belong to the instructor that day. It belonged to everyone in the room. Because in that quiet exchange of bows, every student felt it. A powerful reminder that appearances deceive. That laughter can quickly turn to awe. And that true strength is never loud. It is calm, disciplined, and rooted in respect. From that day forward, Maya was no longer just a visitor who had walked into a martial arts gym out of curiosity. She became something more, something that couldn't be measured in belts or trophies. She became a symbol of humility, of hidden strength, and the quiet power that comes from discipline and respect. The same students who had laughed at her when she first stepped onto the mat now watched her with eyes full of admiration. They no longer saw a beginner in leggings and a t-shirt. They saw a martial artist, one whose movements carried years of training, one whose silence spoke louder than any bragging ever could. It didn't take long before students began to approach her. At first, timidly. Excuse me, Maya, could you show me how you blocked that kick? Could you explain how you redirected a strike? I've never seen it done so smoothly." Maya never hesitated. She answered every question with patience, demonstrating technique slowly, encouraging students when they stumbled, and smiling gently when they succeeded. She wasn't just skilled, she was generous with her knowledge. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A room that had once laughed at her now leaned in to listen, eager to learn from the very person they had underestimated. The instructor himself, who had been humbled most of all, often retold the story, but not with shame. In fact, he told it with pride. "On that day," he would say, standing before a new class, "I learned something I should have remembered all along. Martial arts isn't about ego. It's not about showing off or proving you're the toughest in the room. It's about respect, growth, and recognizing strength wherever it appears." And when he said it, his students listened closely, because they had seen the truth with their own eyes. Word of the spar didn't stay within the walls of that gym for long. A few students, wide-eyed from the experience, had recorded snippets of the exchange on their phones. At first, they shared them among friends. But soon, those clips began spreading online. In the videos, the crowd could be heard laughing lightly as Maya stepped onto the mat. Then, the laughter faded into silence as she effortlessly blocked, redirected, and outmaneuvered a seasoned black belt. The final moment, when her palm rested gently over his chest, halting in mid-strike, became the clip that went viral. Thousands watched, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Comments poured in. Never underestimate someone based on appearances. This is what real martial arts looks like. She didn't need force. She had control. The black belt showed humility at the end. That's the true spirit of martial arts. The world beyond that small gym had witnessed what those students had seen firsthand. A quiet reminder that strength doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it's the calmest person in the room who carries the greatest power. But the most important lesson wasn't about skill. It was about something far deeper. Appearances can mislead. Assumptions can blind us. And respect. True respect must never be withheld from anyone, no matter their age, gender, race, or outward appearance. Maya hadn't stepped onto the mat to prove anything. She hadn't come to embarrass the instructor or to silence the laughter in the room. She had simply accepted a challenge with calm dignity and allowed her actions to speak for her. And in doing so, she taught everyone in that gym, and everyone who later watched online, a powerful truth. Respect must be given freely, not earned through judgment. Weeks later, Maya returned to the gym again. This time, no one laughed. Instead, the students greeted her warmly, offering smiles and bows. The instructor welcomed her like a colleague, not a stranger. The entire atmosphere had shifted. One student, a young boy who had just started training, approached her after class. His voice was shy, but his words carried weight. "Miss Maya, people at school laugh at me sometimes. They say I'm too small to ever be strong. But when I saw your video, I believed maybe I could be strong too." Maya bent down to meet his eyes, her own soft with kindness. "Strength isn't about size," she told him gently. "It's about discipline, patience, and heart. If you keep training, you'll find your strength. Don't ever let anyone's laughter stop you." The boy smiled, truly smiled, and in that moment, Maya knew that her father's lessons had not been wasted. She wasn't just carrying his training. She was passing it forward. And so, the story of that single sparring match grew into something far larger than one gym, one video, or one moment. It became a message, echoed through countless retellings, reposts, and conversations. A message that said, don't judge someone by their appearance. Don't assume weakness where you see humility. Don't mistake silence for inexperience. Because the truth is simple. Strength isn't always visible at first glance. Sometimes it hides quietly, waiting for the right moment. And when it's revealed, it has the power to silence an entire room. On that unforgettable day, in that small martial arts gym, every student learned something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. They didn't just witness skill. They didn't just watch a spar. They witnessed respect. They witnessed humility. And they witnessed the kind of strength that changes how people see the world. And in the end, that was Maya's greatest victory. Not the silence of the crowd, not the viral video, not even the admiration she gained. Her greatest victory was the lesson she left behind. A lesson that will echo in every bow, every spar, and every moment of respect inside that gym for years to come.